That's kind of what I thought.
Ladies and gents, we're going to swear the new council member, Chris Molan, this evening, and then we'll start our meeting. So, Alyssa, if you would do the honors.
Sure. Raise your right hand, please. I, Christopher Mullen,
I, Christopher Mullen,
swear to support and uphold
swear to
support
support and uphold
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States of America,
of the United States of America,
the state of Oregon,
the state of Oregon,
Stayton City Charter,
Stayton City Charter,
and general ordinances
and general ordinances
of the city of Stayton,
of the city of Stayton,
and to faithfully perform
and to faithfully perform
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of city councilor
of city councilor
for the city of Stayton.
for the city of Stayton.
So help me God.
So help me God. All right.
That's right.
We've got a couple of minutes before we start, and I asked one of my appointments to the Budget Committee to come down tonight just to smile and wave at the council and let them see who he is. So if I could, before we start, introduce Brent Walker, longtime local businessman. Lots of things. Been a fixture in the community for a long time, and thought he could help us find lots more money. No, bad. Okay, so we'll let that one go. But thanks for coming down this evening, Brent. All right, shall we go to work? This is a regular meeting of the City Council of Stayton, Oregon, Tuesday, January 16th, 2018. Would all of you please join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's see. Everyone is here that needs to be, and with my inability to remember the names of people I work with all the time, we'll just look around and see that our staff is here, everyone else, council's all here. Let's go to work. Are there any additions to the agenda? Hearing none. Any declarations of ex-party contact, conflicts of interest, bias? Okay. Yes.
One of the things tonight is the, hi, Councilor Cronquist. One of the things tonight is the draft resolution for the overlay plan, which is legislative, and I am a property owner without encumbrances in the area impacted by the plan.
Okay.
But I do feel that'll impact my vote.
Okay. All right. Presentations, comments from the public. Dan Morgan.
Good evening. I'm Dan Morgan. I reside at 2195 Cardinal Avenue here in Stayton. And I've got a couple of issues. They all kind of are both tied together, though, to bring before the City Council. I guess the first thing I would do, I'd like to ask the council or the mayor a couple questions. My topic is the teen center that is going to be possibly up on the Putney development, or the city development up at the end of Kendall Way. And I don't know as a decision has been made on that or not. Has there been a decision made on that yet?
No.
Okay. I guess then my second question is, am I in front of the right body to comment on that, and or is there a different department I need to be talking with, or can you folks, do you have jurisdiction over that eventually?
Sure.
Or? Okay.
It'll come to us eventually, Dan, but it hasn't yet.
Okay, well, I'd just like to throw out some things for you to think about. Number one, I want to make it extremely clear that I am for a teen center. I am greatly for a teen center that is properly staffed and managed, and I think it's a great thing for the city of Stayton to develop. My problem is the location of this teen center. And it's not because it's in my neighborhood. I would gladly have it across the street or behind my house or wherever in my neighborhood. But the problem with the location at this point in time is the drug house that is also on Kendall Way at the north end of Kendall Way. And in turn, it's 120 feet. I just stepped it off roughly, and it's 120 feet from the proposed property that's going to tentatively house the teen development. And right now, I don't know if all of you are aware or not, but last fall there was a raid on the home, and the homeowner was sent to jail under tentative charges of various number of them. He was released from jail because of the overcrowding. So now he was back in the neighborhood within the limited within the school district boundaries that are prohibit a drug house to be in there. Even during his short period of time in jail, the tenants, maybe 4 or 5, 6 of them, we're not sure how many permanent tenants he had living with him, continued his drug sales right as if nothing had ever transpired. Immediately after he got out, and until this day, they are continuing just at what I would call an alarming rate. The problem is, even if there is a warrant out now for his arrest. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. He did not show up for his pretrial determination on whether he was pleading guilty or innocent or what was that. And so therefore, there is now a warrant out for, and has been for quite some time, a warrant for his arrest. Unfortunately, he seems to be pretty sly and clever in not being caught. The problem I have with that, even though if he would go to trial, would be sentenced, if his people that he has living with him continue to stay there, I'm sure, as he was in the short period of time he was in jail before, they will just continue dealing the drugs as they have been. He also, at the time of the raid and the arrest of him, and I don't know the consequences of this, but he had a registered sex offender living with him, as well as what we felt was a couple probably teenage girls and a couple other guys. The disturbing fact we've noticed here lately is he now has a couple teens coming in, one on a skateboard and one on a bicycle. We don't know their age or their exact location or what have you, but they, I don't think, are buying actually from him, but may be coming to buy a given hit for the day or whatever. They seem to have the code or an operating thing for his garage door, as well as several of the cars that come and go from his home now, because he, whether they are wanting to keep disclosed on who they are, or if it's a drug deal, drugs coming in, or what that is, we have no idea.
Mr. Morgan.
Yes.
It's Keith Campbell, City Administrator. I do just, I guess, want to caution you. I mean, I think we are aware of some of the issues. We can't publicly comment on some of those, but I would just advise you not to speculate per se on what's happening out there at this time. But we are aware of issues out in that area and have been working with that. And like I said, it's not something we can publicly comment on at this time. But I just want to caution you maybe not to speculate on what could or could not be occurring beyond the known facts.
Okay, well, a couple of the known facts I know is there's cars coming in the middle of the night. Now they are getting, so they do not park on Kendall Way. They park over on our street or a street behind us, and one of the participants walks over to the house at 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't think he's going there to watch a football game with anyone. I think we know what he's going there for. So it's a continuous problem. We continually have people walking around in our neighborhood at all times of the day and the night who are not residents of the neighborhood, and we pretty well know why or what they're doing in that neighborhood. I'm thinking with this being so close, this teen center being so close to the proximity of this home and this neighborhood, it is not at this point in time, an inviting place to establish it. If we get the drug house closed up, then I'm all for it, and it would be a great benefit to the community and to our neighborhood. I've got 2 grandkids, and we moved to this area to give them the little town feeling and the feeling of belonging to a neighborhood. I will not let them ride their bicycles around the block now by themselves. I, in fact, will not even let them out in the front yard with unless my wife or I am out there present with them. I just don't feel comfortable with the type of characters that are in our area, that a teen center should be in it, or even my grandkids should be out in it by themselves. The only walkway now to that center is right directly by this drug house. So teens, I'm thinking if they're walking in after school or whatever, whenever their activities are, they're going to be going right by this home. If these 2 kids I previously mentioned on the skateboard and bicycle happen to be going to the teen center too, I can see them easily saying, hey, let's stop and by at my buddy's house on the way home, and that would be, you know, a very detrimental thing also. So I guess the other thing that I would like to ask the council, if at all possible, I have no idea how the police department is funded or anything, but if the council could come up with any more monies to fund them, so maybe they could get confidential informants, or if they could get more surveillance equipment, video or whatever, anything the council could do. We've been putting up with this problem for a year now, and it doesn't seem to be having a quick end to it. So, you know, if you can buy a SWAT vehicle or a helicopter or whatever to help us catch this guy and get rid of this problem in our neighborhood, we'd greatly appreciate it. The main thing I'm wanting is that if he is found guilty and sent to prison, there still needs to be some avenue of closing down the house so his living participants can't continue to participate in the dealing of drugs in Stayton. Anybody have any comment or questions? Did I go too far on explaining it in the neighborhood?
Plenty of time. Dan, have you and all the neighbors over there, have they flooded the police department with calls about what they consider suspicious activity?
I'm hoping so. We've developed a neighborhood watch, and I've given out the number, the dispatch number for the police to several of them, and I look on the Stayton events police report every day and see several addresses I'm familiar with reporting vicious activities and so forth in the area. So I think we as neighbors are doing our share, and we sure appreciate the police department too. I feel they are doing the best they can too. If we can maybe get a couple of new prosecuting attorneys in our county, that might help my cause too, but that's a whole nother issue. But no, I feel that so far, unless, like I said, we could get a drug informant in there or more surveillance equipment or something, that we could not only pin him, but some of the buyers and users at the same time, it would really help.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. Great start. Julie Boxler. Julie, I see people, I think I see folks moving into those 2 houses.
They sold and
Hollister
closed,
Third.
and all homeowners.
Okay.
So I think that'll be nice.
Yeah. Awesome.
Elderly couple and their 2 daughters.
Okay. Wonderful. Go ahead. You've got the floor.
Okay, I'm Julie Boxler, 1660 Mount Jefferson Drive here in Stayton, Oregon, and I have several rental properties here in the city, and I have flipped a couple of houses here in the city, and I'm currently the owner of the building that the quilting shop is in. So I just closed on that last week, and we're going to start fixing that up. I also own a vacant piece of property on 2nd Street between Florence and Water, and it's the block of that vacant part, and that's what I'm here to talk about today, is encouragement for investors to put vertical housing in a small area of the city. And I think it would be, I'm not sure what Dan's going to propose, but the downtown core area, so we can get more people into the city, living in the city, and then using the commercial properties downtown. So I do have a little bit of a bias since I own a piece down there. 2 pieces. So the state of Oregon says they do the vertical housing tax reduction to augment available appropriate housing and revitalize communities. They have many rules that I think you will have to follow about the square footage and how you get your tax rebate. It goes anywhere between 0% and 80% of the value of the new construction. So you're not ever given a 100% tax break for 10 years. You work out this incredibly long and difficult formula, and then you get a tax credit for 10 years at whatever percentage you come up to meeting that vertical housing requirement. So I just wanted to stop by and say I'm in favor of the vertical housing development zone, and I hope you will be too. Thanks.
Well, thank you. It looked like somebody, probably you, were terrorizing that building, the upper layer of that, the quilt shop, what I call the quilt shop.
Yeah, we did the lower level yesterday.
Okay.
We're just taking out ceilings to see what the structure looks like, so we can get the structural engineer in there to give us the formula to make it safer.
Well, it's exciting. I remember, I think it was you, when you bought that a few months ago, and say you wouldn't recognize it in 6 months. I remember that comment.
Yeah, but I didn't close until last week.
Oh, well, I didn't care about just the idea that
So you might have to give me a year.
get some things going there. It's neat. All right, thanks, Jim.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
And totally personal. With the second floor of the Quilt and Stitch, are you going to turn that into housing, or are you going to turn it into more retail space?
I'm hoping to turn it into more retail space. Not retail, commercial space. So
Commercial
maybe
space.
offices or something of that sort. There'd be more retail on the first level. But I have to work with the, I have to go talk to the county because they have no idea what the occupancy of the second floor is.
Okay. I just, as the former owner of an Airbnb here, and then we also lost some housing, I can tell you that I get calls daily, literally daily, for people looking for like hotel rooms. I mean, willing to pay. I won't even tell you what somebody told me. If mine is rented up through September, but I got a call while I was in Texas, and the person offered me so much money that I thought about moving my tenant into my house for a week to get it. There is such a lack of that kind of housing in our community. And I know that I had visited some towns that were talking about kind of the small designer hotels that are happening in downtown areas, and the incredible popularity that they're bringing to. So a thought for you.
Yes, I actually drew out a plan for a 6-room hotel. It might be a lot more difficult than I can do with the county.
Okay, yeah. It sure would be nice, though.
Yeah, it'd be a cute little place because it has all those front windows.
Right.
But more reason for it, because if I put a house up for rent, I'll get 77 calls in the first day. So, I mean, I know we need more housing here, probably more hotel space too, but
Right,
definitely
yeah.
more housing.
Yeah, yeah. I know the housing, but the fact that the hotel space, I think, is more lucrative financially, probably.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
And it's certainly needed.
Well, we do have an Airbnb going in on Ida, right?
Yeah.
Ida and Evergreen.
Good. Yeah, we need about 5 of them.
Yeah. So, any questions?
No, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Julie. Okay, folks, are there any other comments from the public this evening, right now? There'll be a chance at the end of the meeting. Okay. Consent agenda, December 18th, City Council minutes.
I move we accept the consent
Resolution
agenda.
number 972, extending City of Stayton's workers' comp coverage to volunteers of the City of Stayton.
I move we accept the consent agenda and 972 as written and reported.
Okay, I got a motion to accept the consent agenda as sort of read or identified. Is there a second? Anyone?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Motion and a second to accept the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, we'll move along. And the next thing we have is a public hearing. Okay, and it is, we fumbled through our paperwork here. It's ordinance number 1015, amending the land use code regarding standards for awnings and a color palette for buildings in the downtown area. Is that palette or palette?
Palette.
Palette? Palette?
Palette.
Wonderful. Good evening. My name is Hank Porter, Mayor of Stayton. I will be presiding over this hearing. We have to start on this thing here. We have to do this first. This is a time and place set for the public hearing in the matter of land use file number 11-10/17 concerning legislative amendments to the Land Use Development Code regarding acceptable palette of colors for building exteriors in the downtown zones and standards for awnings on buildings in the downtown zone. The hearing is now open. At the back counter is the agenda for this evening's meeting, which lays out the order in which people will be called on to speak during the public hearing, a copy of the proposed amendments to City Council's Rules of Procedure for Land Use Public Hearings, and a brochure written to facilitate your participation in the public hearing. You're encouraged to obtain and read a copy of these documents as well. At this time, I would ask the audience if there are any objections to the notice for this hearing. I hear none. To the jurisdiction of this body to hear and consider this matter. I hear none. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest, ex parte contact, or bias by any members of this body? I hear none.
Just a moment.
Yes.
I'm not quite sure if I really need to do this because I haven't been involved in this process in any way, shape, or form. However, this, I think, started in a group that I am a member of that group, even though I have not worked at all on this process. But I am a member of the Friends of Old Town Stayton group, and I think that's who is working on this process. So even though, again, I don't feel like I would be biased in any way since, again, I had no involvement in this process whatsoever, I do want to make note that I am a member of the Friends of Old, that I am a proud member of the Friends of Old Town Stayton.
And Councilor Glidewell, I'd like to also point out that you are a property owner in a zone that will be impacted by these amendments, and that is enough to cause you to declare a potential conflict of interest.
I've had so little to do with it that I can tell you that I don't even know what it's where it's going to be.
I too am a commercial property owner unencumbered in the area impacted by these, but I don't feel that my commercial property is a residence and I don't intend on having it be a business or an awning, so I don't feel that it's going to cause me necessity to recuse myself.
Are we all washed clean?
We are now.
In earth tones.
Okay. Heck. So we're ready for the staff report.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. The public hearing tonight is on really a pair of amendments to the Land Use and Development Code as it affects the color that mixed use and commercial buildings in the downtown area may be painted, and also affects the style, design, color, etc. of awnings on those structures. The amendments, as Councilor Glidewell implied, were submitted to the Planning Commission by the Friends of Old Town Stayton, our local Main Street group here in Stayton. The Planning Commission, they are part of a larger package of amendments that were presented to the Planning Commission, but most of the amendments that the Friends were suggesting did not deal with Title 17, the Land Use and Development Code. These two portions did. As a matter of background, in 2003, I believe, the code was amended to establish what was called a historic downtown and residential business district overlay zones. And as part of that, the code at that time included a standard that, for building colors, that said that the predominant color shall be of a variety and be derived from a specific color palette of earth tones similar to those used from 1905 to 1930. New colors are designated to allow for the same kind of flexibility and freedom that created the original appearance of downtown. And then there were two other standards, one of which said that buildings should retain variety and be painted a different color palette. And the third one was very bright or neon-type paint used to attract attention to the building is prohibited. When I got here several years later, and the Planning Commission was at the tail end of a total revamp of all of Title 17, I saw that, and I asked my assistant planner and others in City Hall, I said, oh, where is this specific color palette that the code refers to, expecting that there'd be a chart of acceptable colors, and was told, oh, there's no palette, there is nothing. So that this language for the historic overlay zones was left unchanged in 2007 when Title 17 was rewritten, but shortly thereafter the city did a downtown revitalization plan which was adopted by the City Council, and all of the historic preservation standards that were in the code were repealed, and new standards for downtown development were included in the code in 2008. And at that time, the Planning Commission wanted to include a color palette. And so I did a bit of research at that time. We came up with a definition of what earth tone meant. And I did essentially some cut and paste on the computer of different examples of earth tone colors and created a table of color squares that got put into the code. Unfortunately, what we quickly learned was that palette of acceptable colors that was put into the code varied substantially depending on which printer was used to print it out, or even what computer monitor you were looking at it on. So that palette was applied, I'll say, quite liberally as to what was an acceptable color or not. And that is where our code stands today. The proposal that you have before you would delete that table of colors that are in the, here, would you assist me, Lieutenant Button, and hold that up for everybody? Would replace that table of cut and paste colors that are in the code with this palette of real life actual paint chips, of saying these are the colors that will be acceptable, and refers to, has a different definition of what counts as earth tone, essentially referring to this board of paint chips. It would also exempt from these requirements any building that is on the National Register of Historic Places, Currently, in the downtown zones, there are 2 buildings on the National Register, the Dietrich Building and what I call the Galen Sims Building over on 2nd Ave, next to the food bank. So that's the color palette portion. Also, in the 2008 standards was language that requires any new building to have awnings over the building entrances, but doesn't really have much of standards. The proposal that is sent to you by the Planning Commission includes some new standards for awnings that would require that when an awning is installed, that the awning shall extend from the front of the building to cover at least 2/3 of the sidewalk, unless the building is set back from the front property line, but our code encourages buildings in the downtown area to be built right up onto the front property line, or unless there would be interfere with existing trees or utility poles, et cetera. And then establishes standards for awnings, requiring them to either be flat or sloping, to be made of metal, wood, canvas, or other similar materials, but prohibiting rounded bubble or plastic awnings, and any awnings that is fully transparent, fully glazed. So that's a basic summary of the proposal that's in front of you. The Planning Commission held their hearing back in November. There was no testimony at that time in opposition to it. The Planning Commission made a couple of changes to what had been presented to them by the Friends of Old Town Stayton, and the amendments that you have before you are the recommendation from the Planning Commission that incorporate the changes they want to see in them. So I'll answer any questions that you have and then turn it over to public testimony.
Thank you, Dan. Are there any questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Brian.
Dan, this is only new development downtown. Is that what you stated?
The color palette would apply to any new development and would apply to any building that gets repainted also. But it would not require that a building that does not meet the color palette be repainted.
Same with the awning then.
And same with awnings, correct.
Do you know how many current POTS members own any of the property downtown?
No, that's the easy answer to your question.
I'll change it.
It's a difficult question to answer because there's not a formal membership
I'll just ask.
for FOTS, but I would say of the people who are active, there are between 1/3 and 1/2 of the people who are active are either downtown business people and or downtown property owners.
Okay.
Anyone else have a question? How about proponents' testimony? Those in favor of this proposal? There we go.
Good evening. My name is Steve Poison, and I live at 1750 East Pine here in Stayton. I am on the design committee for Friends of Old Town Stayton. Just to recap a bit of what Dan has already told you, in May of last year, I brought you a set of ordinances we were suggesting that you adopt to support our work in downtown revitalization. Since then, I have met several times with both Keith and Dan to refine these ordinances and met with the Chamber of Commerce to get their support for what we're proposing. There were 2 of these proposed ordinances, as Dan said, that existed under Title 17 of the code, thus were under the purview of the Planning Commission. So we went to the Planning Commission and presented our proposals for the color palette, as well as the awning standards. A public hearing was held, and the Planning Commission has sent them to you with the recommendation to pass them as presented. The remainder of our proposals fall under Title 15 of the code, and we will present those to you at the next council meeting, since they are not part of what the Planning Commission was part of. A representative of the Chamber of Commerce spoke at the Planning Commission public hearing, expressing support for passage of not only these Title 17 ordinances, but of the entire package that we will be presenting. We ask that you pass the current 2 ordinances as presented to you today, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have about these awnings or colors that we're proposing.
Anything for Steve? Okay. For now then, thanks,
Thank you.
Mr. P. Okay. Any other proponents' testimony? Those in favor of this?
I'll
Okay.
just say a couple things. Did you have to sign up? Okay, good. Thank you. So, my name is Alan Meyer, and I'm chair of FOTS. And a couple things about this. These aren't the only colors. These are color ranges. So there's actually thousands of colors that you can pick. This only just represents the ranges. And then as far as the trim, that's up to the homeowner or to the business owner as long as it kind of complements the building. So I want to make sure that you guys understand that you're not just limited to those particular colors. And really the whole purpose of this is to prevent us from having a pink building or a lime green building or a purple building downtown. It really complements the existing standard. We just didn't have really good examples of what those colors should be. So this isn't a huge change. It's just a minor change in the grand scheme of things, and we would appreciate your support on this.
So we can forget, Alan, we can forget lime green and purple. Okay. Anyone else? Thanks, Alan, for the comments. Government agencies or opponents' testimony? That small group that really likes lime green and purple. Come on. No? Okay. Government agencies. I don't know. We wouldn't have to reach out to anyone else, would we? On how to paint our downtown? I don't think so. Dan, I think I'm directing that,
No?
throwing that
No,
at you. Okay.
for all land use code changes, we must notify the Department of Land Conservation and Development, and that was done
Okay.
well advance of the Planning Commission's hearing, and they have not provided any comment.
Okay. Any general testimony? Anyone else want to say anything about this? Questions from the public? Ah, yes, please, Julie.
I just don't see anything in these rules about awnings that are already there. So like on mine, I'm going to have to replace it, and I don't think it meets all of these requirements because I think I can reach up and touch it, so I'm pretty sure it's not 8 feet high. And I haven't measured the width, but if I replace the material on it, do I have to replace the frame to meet the new code?
I don't know. Dan, would you care to comment on that?
And the material's deteriorating and has to be replaced.
Certainly, any existing awning that does not meet these standards can continue. I would say if you are merely, if it's a fabric awning and you are merely replacing the fabric without changing the frame, then that would be permitted by the code. If there's any change to the frame, then the new frame or the modified frame would need to meet the current standards.
Okay, and if you take down your awning to paint the building?
Then it can go back up.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. Some good questions here. Let's see, questions from the public, questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'm glad Julie asked that question. And I want a clarification on Alan's statement, because in the code itself, it says the city planner shall approve the combination of colors used for body and trim as consistent with the overall theme desired for the downtown area. So my thought is that you're going to be getting a lot of people coming to you before they paint the trim,
I hope so.
saying, can I do this? So Dan's going to be the sole person to decide whether the code is adhered to or not, based on the color palette.
I think we should have them come to council.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Mr. Bremer?
Mr. Mayor?
I'm colorblind, so I'm the only person here that has a perfect view of this.
No discrimination.
I know Dan is not colorblind, so that's the only thing I want to make sure.
And if I could make one comment.
Mr. Mayor, I would advise that we're on questions from the council, and that's passed unless we wanted to.
Okay. Question, all right. Any other questions from the council?
I'm okay with Alan's response, Mr. Mayor, if you
Well, I
allow
was just
it.
going to say that Dan already does that. This is no
I know.
change in Dan's responsibility.
Okay. Any other questions from the council? Let's go to us.
Move we approve it?
We got ways to go here. Staff summary, got it.
So in the staff report, staff has presented you with 3 options. One is to approve the ordinance as presented. 2 is to approve the ordinance with whatever modifications you see are appropriate. And 3 is to retain the code unchanged, which would be to reject the ordinance and the changes that are in it. The recommendation from the Planning Commission is to adopt the ordinance as presented, as is recommendation from the staff.
Okay. That's it. That's a summary, okay.
That's my summary.
Okay. Hearing's closed. Council deliberation. What would you folks like to do with
I
this?
move we accept it as written.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the first consideration of ordinance 1015. That's our choice.
yeah.
Yep.
Second it.
And Joe, and a second. Any other discussion on this one? Anything? Melissa, would you then poll the council, please?
Sure. Counselor Esselman?
Yes.
Counselor Quigley?
Yes.
Counselor Cronquist?
Yes.
Counselor Mullen?
Yes.
Counselor Glidewell?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
If the vote is unanimous, which it is, ordinance 1015 is enacted and will be presented to the mayor for his approval. Thank you. Okay, let's go on. Unfinished business. Proposed resolution establishing residential rental registration fee. Mr. Fleischman.
Thank you. Most of you will recall, but for Councilor Mullen's benefit, I'll go into a little bit more detail. In November 16, after quite a bit of deliberation, I think, the council chose to enact an ordinance which established for the first time standards for residential rental units. Some, in my opinion, some pretty basic minimum standards that those units needed to meet. As part of that code, or part of that ordinance, the code established a requirement for annual registration and payment of a fee. But at that time, in November 16, the previous council chose to not have any registration or fee. This past spring, as the council was working on your annual goal setting, there was discussion about the desirability for exploration of a licensing program for rental properties. In this past November, staff brought to you Resolution 969, which would have established the requirement for residential rental units to be registered and to pay an annual fee. The draft that was brought before you at that time established a rental fee of $10 per unit per year. And there was discussion at that time from the council to requesting that staff look at some alternatives for some of the ideas that were brought out at that time were that the fee be graduated based on either the value of the unit, the assessed value of the unit, or perhaps the rental, the rent, so that a lower rental unit would not have as much of a fee as an upper rental unit, or that perhaps someone who owns a lot of units would not pay as much per unit as someone who only has 1 or 2 units. So the research that was done is presented to you in the second page of the staff report. There, I looked essentially, again, went on the web, looked at several dozen cities. Those that have a similar fee, there's quite a bit of range. A number of the cities that are included on this list don't specifically have a residential rental fee, but cover residential rental units as part of their general business licensing program. Every business in the city must have a license from the city, including the business of renting homes or apartments. So I have designated, in this table that I've given you, I've designated those cities with an asterisk after them, so those are just part of their general business licensing. And you'll see that the fee in these other cities ranges from a low of $10 per unit, well, actually a low of $0 per unit for landlords with only 1 unit. But for others, Beaverton, if you have 2 or fewer units, there's no fee, but there's still a registration requirement. To as much as $55 per unit for the first couple, but then a graduated fee down to $35 per unit for someone who owns more than 200 rental units. So again, this resolution is based on the adopted council goals to explore such a program. The draft resolution that you have in front of you still has the $10 per unit per year fee in it. The staff recommendation is to adopt the resolution as presented, but you've got the option to direct us to come back with a specific, some other fee schedule if you'd like, or a different number. There's no magic to the number 10. Based on previous estimates, a $10 fee is likely to generate someplace in the range of $12,000 or $15,000 a year revenue for the city. Oh, I did, the other part that's in my staff report that I did look at is from the research that I can do, there's not a lot of certainty to these numbers, but it appears to me that the 3 property owners in the city of Stayton with the largest number of rental units own 78, 61, and 56 rental units. So those would be the 3, the 3 entities that would be most impacted by this type of decision to impose a fee. It may be that there are individuals or companies who own property in more than one different legal entity, but based on the assessor's records of who the property owner is, those are the numbers that I could come up with.
Dan, this essentially goes back a couple of years. It's a reaction to a situation we had where a property owner had let a group of rentals deteriorate to where they weren't really livable, and we had to take a kind of drastic action that shouldn't have been necessary but was. So with this, if we establish a fee, is there also an inspection, let's call it I don't know, a profile isn't the right word, but a way to do inspections if necessary or as necessary or on some kind of regular basis?
There is, staff has not proposed setting up a periodic inspection program.
Okay.
The fee, I think, is envisioned more to reimburse the city for the costs of enforcement. I don't know, since November of 16 or December of 16, when these new code provisions took effect, I don't know how many calls the police department enforcement staff has fielded for these types of complaints. I do know from my interactions with the enforcement staff that there have been some. There have not, my understanding is there have not yet been any tenants who have filed a formal written complaint, but there have been, shall we say, calls for service regarding the condition of residential rental properties.
Okay. All right, so one thing at a time, a fee or not, and then
Right.
some kind of structure to deal with complaints.
Yeah, and these are clearly policy decisions for the council to make as to whether to require registration, whether to require an annual fee, and if so, how to structure that fee.
Okay. So,
I have a question.
questions, thoughts? Yes.
Question, Mr. Mayor, okay. Couple things. I was actually one of the people that was, wanted to know what other people did when we did it, and I have actually given this a lot of thought, and so know exactly what I think we should do. But I guess I feel that we are in error by relating this action in any way to what happened a couple of years ago or a year ago with the thing, because this would not have had any effect whatsoever on what occurred, because as Dan said, it has absolutely nothing in it about checking to make sure that housing is there. So the two I don't see any connection to, I guess. So I'm wanting to make sure that nobody's thinking that because we pass this that's somehow gonna do something to change that. So that was just my thought. And I actually am, in my looking at this and giving this lots of thought after we looked at it before, think that a whole lot of this looks really, really confusing. And the very first thing we talked about, which was just $10 a unit for everybody, looks much better than what I thought it did to begin with. Instead of all of these graduated things and who owns what who and the staff time it would take to figure out who owns what who, $10 a unit, given that the largest property owners in town only own 60 units is we're not talking about a significant amount of money, or what I would feel would even be a significant amount of impact on rent in any significant way. But again, I just want to make sure that anyone who's looking at this or hearing it or thinking that this in some way is going to would have made our situation any different than what it was doesn't believe that, because unless someone can show me different, there's no connection between the two issues.
The fact that we'd never looked at rental housing before in the last 6,000 years suggests that that incident did have something to do with moving our thinking towards some kind of regulation of rental housing, or at least some oversight. So,
Which this doesn't offer. No oversight.
well, maybe it's a start,
That could be.
you know. But, okay, anyone else? Please, jump in this if you feel up to it or need to.
The code doesn't provide.
Okay. What would you folks like to do with this? We've got a couple of recommendations. Approve 969, these are resolutions. Approve it with modifications, return it to staff for modification, or take no action. What would you folks like to do?
I would recommend adoption of Resolution 969 as presented.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to approve Resolution 969 and a second as presented. So let's just go to a voice vote on this, and if it gets all messed up, we'll have Alyssa do her thing. If there's no other discussion, would all in favor of approving Resolution 969 as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign?
No.
Okay. I have it 4-1, and the resolution is adopted. Okay, next, new business, appointment of a council president. I thought we only did this once every 2 years. We can do it every new year, but I thought it was just every new 2-year term. But no problem. Now, Alyssa, what have you got for us?
You covered it.
Oh,
It is time to appoint a new council president.
really?
So,
When was the last time we did that?
Last year.
last year. We do it annually.
Okay. It's all right with me.
Do we make nominations? Is that
Yeah.
it?
Yes,
Yeah.
currently
Yeah.
your council president is Councilor
we need
Quigley.
somebody-
Right, yeah. I'd like to nominate Mr. Quigley again.
That's seconded.
A
All
motion
right.
and a second.
I'm humbled, thank you.
Nominate
I think.
Brian
That's
Quigley.
fine, too.
How long have you served as council president? This is years now.
Yes, I think, I don't know.
5 or
Alyssa?
6?
I don't know, yes, quite a while.
Congratulations.
A while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
See, we don't want to train anybody new.
Must be doing a good job at it. Okay.
We have a vote, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go to a vote. All in favor of Brian Quigley as nominated for council president, please say aye.
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 Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
And nobody
I think.
opposed to that one. I even voted on that one.
Wow, thank you very much.
Okay, appointment to council liaisons to boards and committees. Ms. Angelo.
Yes, all right. So every year we revisit this because we always seem to have some changes. So before you, there is a list of different boards and committees. I put in parentheses next to them who was currently appointed to each committee. Right now, former Councilor Neagle was attending our liaison for the school district and for the adaptive management group. So we need to fill those 2 positions, and if anybody wanted to change what committee or board they're a liaison to, this would also be the time.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Alyssa, I don't know that the San Am Communications Council even exists anymore, because I haven't been doing anything on them for years.
Okay.
I'll go for that one.
What? Charlie?
Is that what I talked to you about once before, Keith, about the public service channel that is unused? That's not?
That's that's the PEG
It was the
committee,
9/11.
which is also
Oh, okay.
got.
Well, how many of these are actively being represented?
I
Mine
All
is.
except that one.
Mine is.
Yeah.
I would be interested in knowing when they are, and one of the reasons is I have been the library board liaison for a while, which I absolutely love, and I'm a constant user of the library. Unfortunately, that board has landed at the very same time of another commitment I have that I cannot change. So I have been unable to attend on a regular basis, have been able to attend, what, 1 out of 4 or 5 meetings, maybe. I do get the minutes, but feel, I guess I feel guilty that I can't attend as much as I could. So, if someone would like to do a better job of that's great. If that is okay with people that I don't attend every time, that's okay too. And I wouldn't mind picking up one of Jennifer's, again, depending on the time and the date and any prior commitments that we might have. It's hard to make a commitment when I don't know what those times or dates are.
I think the AMG committee, they meet.
That's once every quarter. That's what it's scheduled.
Mhm.
We haven't had one probably in a year. At least. But that's.
Oh, that's the one I want then. I'll take that.
Once every, you have one for once every
The
3
one that never
years?
meets.
That's with our meetings with the Water Control District. And we alternate scheduling that, and they haven't scheduled it for over a year now, so we've been in no hurry to do that.
So you're on that one.
Okay.
Chris, is there a chance you could take that Marion County Veterans Task Force, a kind of liaison,
Sure.
whatever, and I guess they have meetings once in a while, I hope. I don't know much about it.
Thanks, but
Sure.
It's,
Do you go to that one?
I volunteered for it last year and no communication, didn't know when it was, anything.
So I don't feel so bad, I guess,
know.
that I didn't make every single meeting, huh?
The North Stadium School District meets every third Thursday at 6 PM at rotating locations.
Yeah.
Third
so who has the
Thursday,
school board?
Jennifer did.
Yeah, she had it.
No
Jennifer
one
did.
does. It's open.
Jennifer
It's
did.
empty
Oh,
right now.
who would like to have the school
So who
board?
did, are you doing the first one? Who's doing the first one? The
A-
AMG.
Adaptive Management Group.
You do that?
Yeah, I'm
That's
going
the
to
one
do the
Priscilla,
adapt-
okay.
adaptive
That's the one,
management.
what?
That's Sandy and Water Control District.
Oh, that's the Water Control District. Oh,
Okay.
oh.
Chris is gonna do this one.
You'd like to do that, wouldn't you?
Just I think Priscilla's doing it, right?
I think Priscilla took that
What would you
one.
like?
But, no, if Mark wants to do it, I'm more than willing
Me
to
too,
allow him to
really.
do it. If you and as a matter of fact, you probably have more interest in that area than I do.
I do have water rights as a note of disclosure. I do have, my property includes water rights dating back to 1870 something.
We'll want
I think he's
to,
supposed to do that.
What do you want?
yeah, we'll
So
have
you're
to-
saying you may have a conflict of interest for that?
I don't know if that's a conflict or not. I don't use them.
I would think it is.
Clothes in there anymore?
I would think it is. I think you should stick with that one. That's just my 2 cents.
Should he, you think he should stay out of that?
I think it's too, yeah, I think it's too,
Too close?
yep.
Don't want the school board.
Yeah, school board.
Okay.
School board and parks.
Okay.
So
You
we've
can't.
got the
I don't like- I
library
can't.
I
board
know.
I don't want to.
and the school.
If there's a general feeling that a person could be too close to this group,
I
he's just kind
I
of,
leave that up to other interpretations. I do have ancient unused water rights that may become pertinent in what's going on in the future.
Okay. Next board.
but a person would want to be careful to separate.
I agree. I'm fine with Counselor Gladwell taking that, or not. I mean, I think
I'm
it's going
fine,
to be.
I'm,
That's yours.
I have no vested interest in it
That's yours. We're
whatsoever.
giving it to you.
Whatever,
It's yours.
whatever you would like. Mr. Mayor, whatever you would like to choose is just fine with me.
Do you have any water rights on the river, Priscilla?
I don't know. Dan's the one that knows where all my stuff is. I don't know, Dan, do I have any water rights on the river?
Here is the driven snow, I love it. Okay, why don't you do that? Would you do that, Priscilla?
Yes.
Take that take that, the water control.
I would be happy to,
Would you
Mr.
like to
Mayor.
do the school board?
He can't. I'll take
I
schools
can't.
and parks. Yeah,
Well, he can't do the school
I
board.
can't.
I'll take schools and parks.
Okay, all right. You've got, okay. All right. Those are,
Library board.
these meetings are an eye, just a blink of an eye compared to theirs. I went to one and been a, sort of a part of that for almost 50 years, and I went to one school board meeting. That was enough. Okay, regional transportation. I try very hard to go to the county commissioners' meetings each month. Sometimes Mark is there, usually Chief or Lieutenant B are there. Keith and I try to go to those every month. So that, okay, so library board. Priscilla, I wasn't paying enough attention when you were talking about library board. Did you want to get out of that?
No, not necessarily. I didn't want to get out of it. I just wanted to be honest and upfront that I do have a conflict with another commitment that I've made, so I am only able to attend when that commitment doesn't happen on that evening and time.
Councilor Gladwell, I would like to say that the AMG meetings are usually at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I just wanted to throw that out to you.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, once a
That's a
year.
much better time for me. Daytime is a much better time for me than evening. My evenings are
Bunch not meeting, do you?
full of meetings.
No.
Is there anything else that you'd like to?
Whatever you need me to do, I'll,
Okay, next
Whatever.
one.
I'm good with whatever you need.
Well, yeah, that's fine. We've got everything covered
Except library.
except library.
I think.
Except Councilor Glidewell, when she can be there, would like to still do
When
that.
is the library board meeting?
Wednesdays
At what time?
at 6.
Yeah.
What Wednesday?
Third.
It's the third Wednesday, sorry. Third Wednesday.
So are you going to take it, Mark?
We've got a decision
Thursdays.
here.
Hold on, Mr. Chair.
Okay, otherwise I was going to I'll do just speed the thing up.
Let's go through this and see if there are any
I thought you.
holes in our net. Okay, so Priscilla's going to take the water control district.
Chairman, I'll rotate it.
Okay.
That way we
Mark's
speed
going
this up.
to take the school district, Parks and Recreation. Mark, you're going to do that too? Okay.
I gotta get this thing done.
Regional transportation, I'll do that. Library board, Councilor Glidewell.
Well, she can't do it
No. That's Mark again.
Why can't she do that?
because she's not able to attend the meetings.
How about you down for 2? I'll do that one.
Oh,
I might
God.
need
Joe and I will help out.
Okay, who's doing the library?
Joe and I.
Joe and you.
Put me
Joe?
down. Just,
Well,
just
I
let's go.
can take the library. All
Okay,
right? I'll take the library.
okay.
okay, you've got the veterans too. We still, Councilor.
Okay, that just gives him 2. The new guy just has 2, that's fine.
Communications.
Yeah, but it doesn't meet anymore,
Well,
does
that's
it?
a good board to be on.
No, come on.
And thoughts, and you think that we have a hard time making a decision at that meeting?
This is-
This is an
This
indication.
is the hardest working of the whole council, and maybe I'll concede the most thoughtful of us all. We need something for him to do. What can we have him oversee? We don't have any police oversight, do we?
That's public safety.
Public safety?
That's public safety.
And
I'm
that's
on that
Mr.
one.
Osselman.
I'm on that one. We meet 4 times a year.
4 times a year?
Yeah. Whenever we have something.
Ought to be 4 times a week, shouldn't it? No. Brian, what would you like to do?
I'll go wherever you need me to.
I know, but
Sounds like if you want, if someone wants to split off instead of having multiple, I'll take one of them.
We'll
But
create you a board.
what?
We'll create one for you.
Okay.
okay, all right. We've threshed our way through
If someone
that.
gets to the point where it's too much for them, then just let me know and I'll.
Okay, all right.
Well, I think the adapting them.
Okay, and I,
Since they never have a meeting.
for the past year or so, I tried to go to Parks and Rec meetings. I haven't made the last couple, but as we get into the good weather, I may start going to those again. But, and I think people can sit in on some of these if you're interested in something.
We can set it on them. I still have never figured out how come we don't have somebody at the planning department meeting.
The conflict.
Conflict of interest.
I don't know.
Well, I understand that, but I talked to somebody else, and that is not the case everywhere.
We can go to the planning meetings. no?
Yeah, I do sometimes, or I have.
Yeah.
I may
So-
want to go to a couple of those Marion County Veterans Task Force meetings with Chris, partly because I'm also the commander of the local VFW group here. And that's, always involved with Veterans Affairs. So I hope we can get it done. If we can't, we'll come back and do something else.
Do you have us covered then?
Okay, do we have to make a motion
Yes, we
to
We got
do,
everything covered.
we need to make a
Let's make
motion to appoint these people? Okay.
You have it, right?
We have it.
Okay.
Yes, I've got it.
We'll send it
We've
off and
got-
verify.
The Adaptive Management Group covered, School District covered, Parks and Rec covered, Regional Transportation Advisory, Library Board, Priscilla.
We have the list, Mr. Mayor. We'll send it off and confirm.
Sandiam, well, that's kind of a non-entity. Public Safety Commission, Joe. Marion County Task Force, Mr. Rowland. A motion to appoint counselors to the
Mr. Mayor, I don't think we need a
aforementioned
motion. We have it all.
Oh, this is-
liaison.
She's got it.
We don't need a
You
motion.
got it?
Yeah, we got it.
You have it. Good, okay. Jesus, here we go. Judicial Services Contract, Ms. Angelo again.
Hi. So before you tonight is a request for a renewal and amendment to Judge Jonathan Clark's contract with the city. He's our municipal court judge, and he submitted an enclosed letter and amendment. That's all I've got.
Keith, I think we need to send it Doug.
Has anyone else ever sat in on one of his court sessions Wednesday afternoons at the courthouse? Does anyone else do that on any kind of regular basis? Okay. City staff does. I do when I can. That's interesting to watch. He is a good judge, and very fair, and it's hard to somebody that's going to fine you a bunch of money. It's easy to be kind of out of sorts with them, but he seems to keep stay on their good side, even as he's chastising them with money. So,
Mr. Mayor,
yes,
I'd like to offer a motion to approve the renewal and amendment of the municipal court judge Jonathan Clark's contract as presented.
okay.
With the stipulation that he participate in the dunk tank, I'll second.
Oh, no.
I'll second.
Okay, I've got a motion and finally a second to approve the renewal and amendment of the municipal court Judge Jonathan Clark's contract as presented. Is there any discussion? Okay. Alyssa, would you poll the group on this one, please?
Sure. Counselor Mullen?
Yes.
Counselor Quigley?
Yes.
Counselor Glidewell?
Yes.
Counselor Usselman?
Yes.
Counselor Cronquist?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Next, thank you, folks. Motion passed 5-0, I hope, if I heard that right. Supporting downtown development through establishment of a vertical housing development zone. Mr. Fleischman, back to you.
Good, thank you again. So, what staff has brought before you this evening is really beginning a discussion about whether to enact a tool that could serve as a stimulus for development or redevelopment in the downtown area. Our adopted downtown revitalization plan suggests a number of implementation measures to assist with revitalization of the downtown area, one of which is a vertical housing development zone. And if implemented, what that does is provide a partial exemption on property taxes for developments that are multi-story and have a mix of residential and commercial uses. As I've stated in the staff report, what has stimulated bringing this before you this evening is discussions with a party who's considering the development of a multi-story building, and perhaps we could get a little bit more building or another level out of it if there was this type of incentive. The establishment and operation of a vertical housing development zone is controlled by state statute. And actually, while I was preparing this staff report, actually back in November or December, I discovered that this past session, the legislature amended that statute. I'll get into that in a little bit. But it requires that the city designate an area where the development zone would be created. The property tax exemption varies in accordance with the number of floors on the building that are used for residential use, with a maximum tax exemption of 80% of the building value for a 10-year period. An additional property tax exemption on the land may be given if some or all of the housing is designated for households with an income of less than 80% of the area's median income. The amount of the exemption depends on the number of stories in the building that are larger than 500 square feet. And essentially, for each story of the building that is for residential use, a 20% exemption on the assessed value of the structure is granted. So if it's a 2-story building with commercial on the first floor, residential above, then it would be a 20% exemption. If it was a 4-story building with 3 stories of residential, then it would be a 60% exemption, with a maximum available up to 80%. As I mentioned earlier, this year the legislature enacted Chapter 326 of the laws of 2017 that changed the process for designation. Previously, it was up to a city or a county to apply to the state. That provision has been removed, and essentially the legislature said, cities and counties, you can just go and do this whenever, however, not however, but whenever you want. There's no approval or application process by the state. The statute allows other local taxing jurisdictions to opt out of the exemption. So we need, if the council chooses to go forward with this, we need to provide notice to the other taxing jurisdictions, the county, the schools, the Regional Library Board, the Soil and Water Conservation District. There's 7 of them. I won't be able to name them all without the list in front of me, but there's 7 other jurisdictions with a property tax levy in Stayton, explaining to them the opportunity to opt out. Then if the city chooses to designate a vertical housing development zone, then it's up to the property owner to file an application for certification of the project. Once the eligibility for certification is approved by the city, then notice is provided to the assessor's office and the exemption applies. So it would be hard to estimate what the fiscal impacts upon the city would be. But if we were, right now, I believe there's 7 multi-story buildings in the downtown area. If all of them were to take advantage, and they're all only 2-story buildings, but if all of them were to take advantage of this, make improvements to their upper levels to create residential I estimated that the city's annual loss in revenue would be only about $1,000. Now, obviously, if there was a new building built that was more than 2 stories, then there would be a greater impact on that. So really, again, the purpose of bringing this forward to you tonight is to find out whether you want to go forward with doing this. If so, then we've got a number of steps to follow, notifying the other taxing jurisdictions, figuring out the exact boundaries of the zone, et cetera. And we would be back to you with the appropriate resolutions or ordinances. Probably it makes sense to hold a public hearing before adopting them, to give people an opportunity to speak on it, and then we'd also see what the impact on see what the reaction of the other taxing jurisdictions is. So you're presented with the options of having staff continue with the process or choosing not to, that this is not a tool that you'd like to do.
Okay, thank you, Dan. What would you folks like to do with this? Priscilla?
I have actually a little bit of history in such a situation. Several years ago, we used the tax vertical housing to build the first mid-rise multi-use residential facility in downtown Eugene when it was struggling dramatically. The agency that I was the director of at that time, and although I was not on the side of the city where to know how much money they lost or they didn't lose, I do know that over the next 10 years we did that brought other vertical housing projects near there, that totally changed the neighborhood of the area that we built that facility in, from bringing down the crime rate in that area to absolutely more businesses came into that area and actually were successful businesses. And so I am a giant proponent of this kind of thing, because it isn't just about helping to generate more housing and more building in the area. It has a much further reaching impact when you put housing into an area that's struggling and needs businesses and needs people walking the streets at night and needs, it just has such a great positive impact that I think that we should certainly ask city staff to continue with the process of looking at this.
Just to note, I do own commercial property unencumbered in the overlay zone, as does, I believe, Councilor Glidewell.
Mr. Mayor, question?
Yes, go ahead.
Dan, if one of the taxing entities opts out, does that change the exemption for the landowner? That's going to do the building?
If my understanding, and I don't want to pretend to be an expert yet. Right. I'll get there should you decide to go forward. But my understanding at this point is if one or more of the other taxing jurisdictions opts out, then their tax levy would apply to the full value of the building.
Okay.
So, our tax levy, including local option, is a little less than $4. Mm-hmm. The county's about $3. Gotcha. The school's about $4, and then you've got the other 4 taxing jurisdictions that make up the other $3 of the tax rate.
Gotcha.
Any other questions for Dan?
I think it's a great idea, as long as we got residential, or as long as we got retail on the first floor like they do in Portland.
Well, it would need to be, well, Again, I'd have to look into it more. It may be that if you want to specify that it is retail as opposed to other commercial uses.
Retail or office on the first floor, something,
Then,
yeah.
but it must be commercial it must be mixed use, commercial
Yeah.
and residential.
Mhm.
And for each floor of residential,
I think
you
it's
get a
great, Dan. Thank
20%
you.
exemption.
Yeah.
Okay, you folks have a,
I don't know if anybody has ever visited that building, but it was at the time that we built that building, which was about 25 years ago, it was like a first of its kind. Because it was right near downtown, we actually had mixed-use apartments. So we had apartments for low-income seniors. Then we also had some apartments for students that went to the local community college. So we actually had designated apartments so that that apartment complex had an incredible mixture of people that lived in it. It was very, very well thought out, as well as services that came along with that apartment complex. And it was heated all with geothermal heat from the ground. Interesting building.
and it's still going.
Oh, yeah.
All
And
right.
still going.
Council's presented with the following options: direct staff to begin the process of designating a vertical housing development zone, or choose not to pursue a vertical housing development zone. What would you like to do, folks?
I move we
Says we don't need a motion, so let's express some.
Yeah, move to
some-
continue.
Continue?
Number one.
Number one.
Continue?
Number one.
Yeah.
Continue?
Yep.
Continue? Continue.
All
Dan,
right, well-
forge ahead.
We'll be back with more when we're ready.
All right, thank you. Okay, staff commission reports. Cindy and Elizabeth's report, finance. And any questions on that? And the police report, Lieutenant B.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm here in lieu of the chief tonight. He's at Seaside for some training. He provided a 2017 end-of-year staff report, and I have nothing to add besides the report.
Anyone have any questions on any of that? Okay, let's go on then. Public Works Director, Mr. Ludwig.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Before you, you have the monthly operating report for the Public Works Department for December. I have nothing really further to add to it, but I'll be happy to answer any questions you have regarding this report or anything else that's going on in Public Works.
I don't know, maybe there's no good time for this, but you done any preliminary thinking about this proposal from up the canyon?
The dam, I think you're probably
dam.
referring to.
Mm-hmm.
No, since I really first just heard about it the other night, no, I haven't. I'm going to a meeting tomorrow night, I believe, with the city manager. We're going to be attending that, and then making plans regardless. We'll be voicing our displeasure with the communication from the Corps of Engineers, for
And
one
this is-
thing, but
This is at the Gates Fire Hall,
yes, sir.
which, like most of the fire districts in our area, the fire hall is the nicest building in the community.
Absolutely. Statewide.
Says something. I don't know what, I'm going to try to go to that too, so it'd probably be a real circus, but it might be interesting to see how the Corps of Engineers defends that.
Well, fortunately, we have a few years it doesn't matter what alternative they go with. We've got a few years to plan, and well, that's a good thing.
Or to move.
Nowhere to move.
Okay, thank you, Lance.
All right.
Planning and Development Director's report, Mr. Fleshman.
You've got my written report in front of you. I have nothing more to add, but I'll answer any of your questions.
Dan, do you have a full house for your planning commission?
No, we have one vacancy.
Oh,
There was a member whose term was up in December who chose to not be reappointed.
okay. Okay, I think I have an idea for that, but we'll do that
Excellent.
next month. Let's see, library, Jana, Ms. Mosier.
So, Mayor and Council, you have my report before you. I'd also like to invite you to Bruce Bites Books, which is not this Saturday, but the following one, from 7 to 9. So tickets are on sale on the Foundation's website, or you can buy them at the library. And then Three Creeks Brewing is providing the beer for that event. And we're going to have food from Baked and Loaded Potatoes, La Esperanza, Rico's, Wheat, the baking company, the Love and Oven, and Trexler Farm. So it should be an exciting event.
And Snow Peak Brewery takes their lease January 1st, or February 1st.
Very cool.
Were you impressed with excerpts from a recent book that asked our fearless leader if he could read?
I didn't read the book.
Did you? I haven't seen it either. Thank you, Gianna. Presentations, comments from the public. Is there anything else this evening? We are rapidly drifting toward a conclusion this evening.
I have one quick question.
Yes,
Jana, where
please.
can
Go
people
ahead.
get tickets at for the Brews and Bites?
For the which, please?
For the Bruise Bites. You can buy them online through
Oh.
the Foundation website, or you can buy them at the desk at the library.
Okay, all right, good. Anything from the audience else? Business from the city administrator, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing this evening.
Okay. Business from the mayor. I was heartened by a news thing this evening that showed, sometimes thinking that this age thing creeps up on us and you just, it's time to go do something else, anything else. But no, that NBC had a little clip about a couple of mayors that continued to serve. One was 97 and one was 93, and they were still very active in their communities. And I thought, well, there's hope then, isn't there? Isn't that nice? Okay. Business from the council.
Is that something that's saying that you're going to run? Is that?
It's just a.
His 2038 campaign needs a manager.
Oh, and we don't have another meeting till February. Okay, so, and that's planned and all, okay. Business from the council, anything? A welcome to Chris. I don't know if this is typical of our meetings or not.
It hurt my brain a little bit.
But thank you for joining us and being here. And sometimes it's better and sometimes it's worse. But anyway, future agenda items, library reader board presentation, that's neat. And the North Santiam School Board update, are they coming to a meeting and sharing something with us? Okay, all right, anything else? We're done.